Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, continuing on with our team-by-team previews, but more importantly, also a match sim that happened over the weekend involving the Western Bulldogs and Essendon. And we're talking about the Bulldogs. We've got Matty on from the Inside the Kennel podcast. Welcome, mate.
Hey, Swizz, fantastic to be on. Wonderful.
Mate, it's a great time to have you on. Not only you would have watched a lot of footy over the weekend, good to have footy back, but you're also down at training as of this morning. So there's a lot to talk about with the doggies. But
Indeed.
before we jump into that, as always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular the YouTube, Spotify. Get in contact with us via X Supercoach Insider 100 or Swizz 26 for me directly. Matty, where can the good folk find you, especially find this great podcast of yours?
Oh, yeah, thanks for saying it. So I'm affiliated with a podcast called Inside the Kennel. It's a vodcast. So it's a visual version. So we really recommend if you like hearing past player stories, particularly Bulldog affiliated, head to YouTube and type in Inside the Kennel. Dougie Hawkins, the great Dougie Hawkins, is my co-host. So we get some pretty inside scoopy stuff and tell basically some stories from yesteryear. So get on board. I love players who are multi-club players. So if you don't follow the Dogs, just jump on and you might get a pleasant surprise on there.
I was going to say Fitzroy champion there, Dougie Hawkins. What a legend to do a podcast with, just as a side story. And we know a lot of Bulldog supporters will be tuning into this. So if you haven't already, definitely check that out because that's brilliant.
Beautiful, yeah, fantastic. No, he can tell a yarn, Dougie, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, good, top bloke, and yeah, what a legend of the game. 350 games, so couldn't have done any more in footy, probably outside of team success, but from a personal point of view, spot on. One absolute legend from the West. Let's talk first. We'll go the match sim because that's obviously the important thing there. The Doggies not getting the job done against the Bombers, but really results. Who cares about the actual score? It's about getting your players some proper game time against another opposition, not just playing against your own club, which obviously they're probably sick of doing at this point. And playing against, I feel like the first half was a lot more sort of A team. Obviously there were some players missing, but a bit more A team with the two teams going, and then we sort of saw the filter of the other players come through as the game wore on. What were your thoughts of the game, mate? Because there were some great moments and some good players especially from the footy Bulldogs and a Supercoach point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, the Dogs rotated 33 players through the match, so it's really hard to sort of get a handle and get any chemistry or synergy from one half to the next. So I guess scoreboard aside, the Bulldogs took a lot away from it, just in terms of giving some young players an opportunity to run through the midfield. So the likes of Cooper Hines, who was our number one draft pick, our top draft pick, he played a lot of centre time, midfield time in the second half, and got his hands dirty. He was really impressive. Didn't look uncomfortable at that level. So really big tick for him. The standout player for me for the match was Fraser for us. So off half back, he's a sophomore player. He's in his second year, just running off the defensive lines and just looks so composed. Really carries the lines and was exceptional in both halves. So he was certainly the best doggy on the field. And look, in the first half, I guess the big names that were on the field in Richards and Lobb and West in particular were quite outstanding. And once they came off the field, that was the opportunity, I guess, for some of the younger dogs to fire through. One bloke who caught my eye, who I guess some of the Supercoach people will be interested in, is Sammy Davidson. Now, he played in the VFL last year for Richmond, and I think kicked 26 or 27 goals. He was awarded the best up and coming player. And he's really shown his wares. He's got elite two-way running. His running capacity is exceptional, and he's been playing off on a wing. Now that's a position that's been there's been some vacancies for the Dogs, so I think he's pretty much locked that in for round one. We've just loved what we've seen from him, and he can go forward and hit the scoreboard and damage that way as well. So if you haven't got him in your team, I'd be definitely keeping an eye on him over the next practice match or two.
Yeah, for sure. That was one player I got to see a lot of last year myself. So, yeah, very impressed and disappointed my mob didn't pick him up. But, rap for the doggies and rap for Davidson too, because he's going to add a lot to that side, be it through the wing or, rotating through half forward. But, he's, though he's mature, he's earned his spot. And we saw it like we've seen in the past with Bevo. He's happy to bring these guys in who are proven, but they've also still have to come in and prove themselves. And with the loss of McRae, I don't expect him to be Ajax and McRae, because McRae's been a brilliant player for the doggies. But at the same time, if he can, get up to 75% of what McRae's offered over those years, it's going to be a fantastic pickup for the Dogs at a bargain basement price.
Yeah, big time. And they're calling him the surgeon. He's a medical student. Taylor DeRay's got the nickname Doc sewn up. So surgeon I think, is a really apt name, just because he is quite clinical with his disposal as well. So you're going to love him. He's got the big flowing locks, and we needed to replace someone like a Bailey Smith, a new heartthrob. So they may have found one.
Yeah, and you're right, because obviously losing Bailey too, there is positions here. You've brought in Matty Kennedy from the Blues as well, a guy who can play half forward, can play wing, multi-positional players, which we do love. The Dogs have obviously loved it. I think it's becoming more of an AFL thing too, that because things can happen in games, teams can get runs on, you can get injuries, and they will have players who can fill different roles. Is obviously very vital in 2025 AFL.
Yeah, look, Luke Beveridge is sort of that's his mantra as a coach, that flexibility across all the phases. And I guess someone like a Matt Kennedy, he played a lot of high half forward, sort of during the practice matches and the match sims this year. But we know he's a big body, and he can go into the middle and just have an impact when the likes of Bont comes off and Trelaw's missing or Libba needs a rest. We know we've got a seasoned campaigner who can just pave the way for a Riley Sanders in the middle, and just give some access to some of the younger blokes and some of the smooth users like Ed Richards, who they just love getting the ball in his hands.
That midfield mix is going to be interesting this year. Adam Trelaw's gone down. I've talked about that with Gaz, and I've been a bigger on that on the preseason. I've said multiple times that I play cricket with one of his cousins, and he's been all over Adam's injury, which is a real shame. But at least it's not season ending. He'll be back at some point in that first half of the year. But with injury gives opportunity, and the step up now of Ed Richards was already making that transition as it is, but just a bit more of a load on the shoulders. And then young Sanders as well, who came in, showed signs last year, but was obviously used in the sub role a lot in his first season. He looked quite impressive in that first hit up too, mate.
Yeah, well, look, Sanders has dropped 3 or 4 kilos. That was one of the knocks on his game last year. He just wasn't explosive from the mid. He can get his hands on the ball. He's got, really elite vision and, use by hand and foot. He's, that's not a question on his game, but just his ability to sort of break from the stoppages just wasn't there in his first year. They sort of identified he's a bit heavy in the hip and thigh area, and he's really gone to work on that. And it's paying dividends. He's able to get on a lot of chains, and he seems to sort of he reads the ball magnificently from the centre, throw ups. And, he can read and shark the opposition rucks. He's got a really good connection with Timmy English. So you see him get his hands on the ball first, and he's just able to shovel it out. But then you blink and he's in another position to receive again. So, I guess as a Supercoach sort of enthusiast, you'll love that, because he's in a chain, and, he'll get multiple disposals, in a clearance.
Yeah, for sure. And just for the future of the Dogs, it looks good too. Like Libba, just the way he's played for such a long time, such a warrior. But you can't put his body through the rigors like this every year, and the end is closer than the start, unfortunately. But you've already got ready-made replacements, to come into that guts. Like Kennedy's still not that old, comes in bigger body. You've got Sanders and Richards. It does look good for the future for the doggies in the engine room.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Absolutely, and as I said, I think Joel Frazier is one to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if they start grooming him, if not this year, in the near future, to come in, because he's just a tank, and just a smooth user. I haven't seen too many players this early in their career just look so at ease, and I think he's going to be one of those names that just everybody's going to be talking about by season's end. I've just been incredibly impressed with him.
Yeah, for sure. We'll move down to the back line now. Obviously, a gap opened up with Liam Jones's unfortunate injury. We did get to see a bit of Bustlinger,
Yeah.
and he was quite impressive when he came on. We've gone with Gardner as the fullback, but yeah, you did see a little bit of training this morning to suggest it might be Gardner or somebody else in that position.
Yeah, so I actually popped down to training first thing this morning because I was hoping to intercept Jamari Ugle-Hagan, who they expected to be hitting the track for the first time since his little hiatus, but he didn't make an appearance, Jamara. But fortunately, I got a chance to sit down with Rory Lobb, who put in a blinder of the first half, by the way, in the game against Essendon. Looks terrific, but Rory Lobb's a high defender, and I asked him that directly. Who's going to partner you with with Liam Jones out? And he was genuinely uncertain. He said, "Look, the coaches haven't given him any clarity on that." So he said, "Wouldn't want to be a match committee member because it's going to be tricky." And I guess there's three players sort of in the mix. You've named Ryan Gardner there. Now, just on Gardner, Gardner had his colours really lowered in the game against Essendon. He had 4 goals kicked on him by a rookie in the second half. And you have those dirty days, particularly in those swirly games. So I think you just rule a line through that game, put that in the vault, and hopefully Ryan Gardner, has a little bit of faith and confidence from his coaches to give him another shot at it. Because, for mine, he's a perfect fit for that most further back defensive role. He's got an iron fist. He's been in the system for 6 or 7 years now. He's as tough as nails. So he's a chance, but he's got to bank those games and take his opportunity. But probably at the two players at the top of the rank, and this is what Rory Lobb said, is it's between Buku Karmas and also Jed Bustlinger. Now Jed played the second half in the practice match against Essendon, didn't put a foot wrong. Probably had a dozen stats, probably took 4 intercept marks, really looked composed, used the ball really well. And I put that to Rory, and he said, yeah, he was good, but he said Buku's reading of the play in the air has been really impressive and eye-catching for him. So it felt, without him saying it explicitly, that he felt that Buku Karmas is the more likely deep defender for round 1. But you know what? With 2 practice matches to go, it's all to play for, and those 3 lads will be going head-to-head. If I was a betting man, I'd be picking Bustlinger. I think he's the long-term future. He's a bit taller than Buku, and he's more suited to the deep role, with Buku being Karmas being more of an athletic type. But you know what? We'll soon find that out, and we might know it right to the very, very last Thursday before round 1.
Yeah, I like that, and it's amazing that some of the players still don't know about building up that chemistry as well. Maybe it keeps them guessing. Maybe it's the fact that they might have to work with everybody, at some point throughout the season, and it's just it sort of keeps them on their toes. But I do appreciate that, mate, because that's a great insight. Bailey Dale didn't play on the weekend. Do you have any information about why that happened?
It was just a loading management issue. So on Friday, they removed him from the Thursday rather. They removed him from the competitive drills and just got him running. So it's purely a loading issue. Much the same as Liberatore and Bontempelli were rested. So just giving some of the other boys a run through that area and just making sure that he's cherry ripe to go for round 1. He hasn't put a foot wrong in the preseason. He seems to be taking about 80% of the kick-ins during the match sims, and he's always playing on. So, you're probably going to accumulate a few points from Bailey Dale. He does the kick-ins, chips it in, runs past for the handball, and then he does the exit kicks. So look out for him. He's looked sharp this preseason.
Yeah, well, that was definitely the discussion, the last Bulldogs discussion, where I became very interested in Bailey Dale. I was already interested in him, but yeah, they seem to have a lot of confidence in him. But they already had confidence in him, but want that ball through him as much as possible. A lot of teams play like that with that special halfback, taking the kick outs and then distributing the ball. And you see it like in teams like the Giants, for example, and Brisbane with Whitfields and his Orco types. And it looks like that's where they're moving there with Bailey Dale, especially now with, no Caleb Daniel moving on and JJ having his injury. There's going to be a lot of load through Bailey. But he's obviously such a senior pro that he'll be right with it.
Yep, yeah, spot on. He and Bramble seem to be the designated kicker inners, but the lion's share is definitely with Bailey Dale.
Yeah, that's good to know. And I know the Supercoach listeners proportion of this will be absolutely rapt to hear that. Up forward, mate, we know Ugo Hagen, you're trying to get Jamara this morning. Unfortunately, didn't happen. Not going to be there for at least a round one lineup. We don't know what the situation is from then on. So it looks like, it'll be Norton, Darcy, and either a small or, I can't really picture another tall coming in there and playing that. So I feel like it will be probably a more smaller lineup. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, that's most likely. Look, if they want to sort of go for a hybrid kind of player, a Caleb Poulter, might come in if they're trying to expose a shorter opponent. Like a North Melbourne, for example. So Poulter's played as a sort of a forward pocket, and he can damage in the air, but when he hits the ground, he's terrific as well. So that's a possibility, but they're more likely to go for the small sort of forward line that you've identified there. West and Waitman are locks. Vandermeer played every game last year, and he's very likely to play as a defensive running half forward as well. And then Matt Kennedy's been playing as a high half forward and rotating through the midfield. And of course, Davidson can play there as well. And you've got the likes of Garcia and certainly Lockie. Lockie McNeil's actually put together. You've named him as a sub there. He's been terrific this summer. So he's another chance to be sort of that third small forward as well.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. In regards to, we talked about Buku before, could he potentially be one that could be named off the bench and play as a swingman for that? Because we've said about the fact that he could be in the back line, but we know he has played forward before. And at 190 centimeters, he could be that hybrid at both ends, possibly.
Yeah, look, it's possible. He's only played in defence this for the last 2 summers or 2 seasons, so it's more than unlikely. But look, as an under 18, he kicked 70 goals as a stay home forward, so he can find the big sticks. But my guess would be that they'd play him down back. Jordan Croft is quite raw, but he's been playing on the wing or up forward through the summer. And if he came along and there's an opportunity, he's got some tricks. He's a really fluent runner. He's a beautiful kick, and he can certainly take a grab as well. So I think it's going to be a developmental phase for Jordan Croft, but don't be 100% surprised if we do see a couple of games from him at some point during the year.
Yeah, he's definitely looked good of what I've seen of the footage of him. So, hopefully he gets an opportunity there. Crossley came in and, played majority of the ruck and shared it with English. It looks like he's probably going to get the one that's going to get signed as an SPP in the pre-season. Do you see it that way? And do you think he's going to be more of a backup of option, or could we see him potentially sharing some time with English?
Yeah, great question. So they've had two players training through the summer, Dom Brew and also Crossley. Personally, I'd be signing up Brew. I think he's just a fantastic depth player. He's ready to go in an emergency. He'd be a great depth insurance midfielder. And he's also tremendous with a tag as well. He's actually been tagging Ed Richards all summer to try and prepare and condition Ed to be able to sort of break that in the season. So from a training perspective, he's been invaluable. Whether that translates into him taking the final list spot, I'm not sure. I would hope so, but Crossley's emerged, I guess, with English going down with an abdominal injury sort of about a month ago. Tim came back and played his first competitive hit out this week. So I think certainly from a list management point of view, they're concerned. If Tim went down, you've only got Lockie Smith, who's our next ruckman, known ruckman, and he plied his craft only in the VFL all last year, and in the weekend's practice match as well. So I guess he's sort of in a developmental phase. So that they've got a question mark there. If Tim went down, what happens? What happens? Do they suddenly switch Rory Lobb into the ruck or a Sam Darcy, and then it really destabilises our structure. So I guess they've turned to Crossley over the last couple of weeks and said, look, let's see what you've got. He can certainly hold his own in terms of the strength department with boundary throw-ins and just at stoppages. But around the ground, he appears to have a long way to go to be AFL ready in terms of his body and his conditioning. He looked, quite large in the hips and seemed sluggish to cover the ground. And Draper gave him quite a touch up as the game wore on. So I'd be incredibly concerned if he did get a game, just because I think that opposition would be able to exploit him. But I think he's going to have to put together a really solid block over the next 4 weeks. If they do pick him this week, it'll be with the knowledge that this is your program. You've got to meet these benchmarks, and then it's smash in an emergency, at some point in the season. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's only the one spot the Doggies have open at the moment.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah. The good thing about Brew, he did win that Liston Trophy and win it quite well. And I think he was in the VFL. He might have been the captain of the VFL team of the year too. So, you got that seasoned guy who I just love those stories who, they've been toiling away at that second level for such a long time and, finally break in and get their opportunity. And we've seen enough of that. Geelong have probably been the experts of it, but these guys who come in, mature age and, make an impact at AFL straight away. And, I think it'd be a great story if the guys went him. They gave him some good opportunities in the second half for the CBAs. You got the list. I've got listed down there with the 9 CBAs. So he didn't do much wrong, and and even from a Supercoach perspective, 34 points in that limited game time. So I think that's one that. Probably more breaking glass situation, but you can never have enough midfielders around your group.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So, I do think it's going to come down to a list management perspective. So Don Brewer is probably going to be the unlucky one, but I wouldn't mind seeing him down at Footscray in the VFL if he's not listed. And then, if there's a long-term injury, we know we've got a ready-made player to come in. He's professional and, as you said, did get his hands on the footy a lot in the second half.
Wouldn't be surprised if that's one of those sort of players. Unlucky, goes back to the VFL, gets picked up in the mid-year system. Yep. The only problem there is then the Doggies don't have access, and he could be, and it's no different to Richmond, say with Davidson, probably should have picked him up in the mid-season, didn't. They went elsewhere, and then it comes into the season and it's just open slather to anybody. So these are the opportunities for the clubs to make these decisions. And it's like, okay, well, I guess what's the more important thing? And probably because of the Keytool situation and with Jamara and the doubts, obviously, early on with him, it probably does change the structure a little bit, needing Darcy to play a lot more forward. So I feel like it is going to be the unfortunate one from the way you're talking with Crossley. But at the same time, I guess they feel like they do need the backup plan in case something happened to him. But in saying that, Timmy English has done nothing wrong pre-season, and he's looking for fit and firing. He probably had a couple of issues last year, but this season, I feel like he's back to that 2023 form.
Yeah, this time last year he hadn't touched a footy. He was just running because he had some prolonged concussion protocol effects. So he hadn't touched the footy. So you probably saw late in the season some of his scores, some of his Supercoach scores were probably a little bit deflated just because I think he really fatigued towards the end of the year with a limited preseason. This year, he hadn't missed a block up until he had his abdominal issue earlier this month. He hadn't missed a beat, hadn't missed a single training session. So he's back into it now. He played in the forward pocket to let Crossley sort of play the entire match, on the ball on the weekend, but clunked a few absolute rippers, one in front of the members stand that got the EJ Witten stand absolutely roaring, pulled down, there's probably about 6 or 7 players around him, and it was just this one grab, and I just want to see more of that from him.
Yeah, and personally, I like the setup better. If it's Darcy, the one sort of giving him the chop out. And we know English can go forward. Like, he's not the worst person to go and have a rest up in the forward line. So, he's so athletic around the ground. So I feel like the Bulldogs look like a better team compared to if they were trying to fit in an extra ruck, kind of like when they were playing Rory Lobb up forward. And it just kind of didn't. I felt like it didn't work. It was a bit slow up the forward line. Where this just looks sort of. There's going to be forward pressure. There's guys that can hit goals and be damaging. That's my personal opinion, looking from the outside. And by the way, the nod of the head there, I think you're on board, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as a resting forward, he's dangerous. Him and Darcy, they're going to create some headaches. With the ball coming in long. But then, as you say, you've got a Waitman nipping at their heels, and West is, West kicked 5 goals in our intra club match 2 weeks ago, and kicked the first goal of this week, and then the rains came down, and it really sort of bottled up the game, and he only played the half. But West is going to look, really damaging in partnership with Lee Waitman. But those two big boys, look out. And Norton is the other one we haven't sort of spoken about. He's missed a lot of the preseason. He came in and he played probably just over a half of the game this week. Kicked 1 goal off the ground. Didn't do a great deal, but he was really physical. A couple of the marking contests, he flattened a few of the Bomber defenders, and I think he's got a real appetite to make a statement now that he's got this huge contract in front of him. Look out. Think Dermot Brereton 1985. That's the sort of mentality that he's coming with.
Yeah, no, I love that, mate. From my point of view, I'm going to try to do the right thing by the doggies and not pick them for the flag, because I must admit, I've picked them for the flag for the last 3 years and it's really backfired. And I've got some doggies mates who absolutely hate me doing it because, I've got the soft spot. I've got, there's my wife's aunt who's a doggies girl, and her granddad back in the day played cricket over there in Footscray, and big doggies, man. So they it runs in her family, even though she's somehow a Bombers person. So I want to see the doggies do well. So I'm not going to pick them for the flag, and hopefully it works out better for them this year. What are your legitimate expectations for the Dogs, mate? They were thereabouts again, but where do you actually see them slotting in this season?
I'll try and counterbalance your conservative approach and say we're going for the flag. Look, I always feel that we're flag worthy, and I think all supporters want to see the best from them, and at our best, I think we've got as good a chance as anyone. You just need luck, don't you? And that's the biggest unknown factor. You got to take your chances. You need luck with injuries. We've been a little bit susceptible with that over summer, so hopefully we can bank some early wins, get those players back like your Treloar, your Johannessons, your Liam Jones, and in the meantime, give that next layer of players an opportunity, so we know that when there's a crisis or when there's an injury breakdown, those players can come in and do a job. Look, I always, as I say, I always expect us to be in the top 4 or thereabouts, and I expect us to be there again, no doubt. But you know what? Luck will play a part. So go Dogs. Certainly don't jump off them. And hopefully they're there at the pointy end.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. And the big one for all dog supporters, I know Friday nights is hard for everybody to get down to. It's not always the easiest time, and it's always easy to watch it on TV. But that round 2 match against the Pies is a home game at the MCG. Like, I'm hoping for the dog supporters. That is record-breaking home attendance stuff. 100-year anniversary won't come around again in our lifetime. I hope all the doggy supporters can somehow free off, go ask your boss, get out early and get down to the G, because that's going to be a massive game.
Oh, look, who would want anything else than to smash the Pies on a Friday night? Do you know what? We're going to have a lot of incentive there. There's a huge past players event. We'll have all the blokes from yesteryear down in the rooms and pumping them up. So I think in terms of the emotional boost and that that adrenaline, and every single supporter just ravenous in the stands. I think it's going to be, a bruising affair, and oh my God, it'll be great to get the points on that day. And especially if we beat North Melbourne in round 1, then we get the roll on and those players start ushering back some of the ones that are missing, and beware the doggies.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. And yeah, that's just my shout out to all the dog supporters. If you got mates, whatever, even if your mates aren't Barry for the doggies, get them down. That's one less spot that the Collingwood supporter takes up, because I don't want to hear those stupid chants that day. We want to hear the doggies barking loud. So get down. I think that's going to be awesome, mate. Matty, I really appreciate you coming on today, mate, and giving us those insights. I know the supporters out there will really appreciate it too.
Absolutely, my pleasure and honour there. Certainly, if any of your viewers have any questions, certainly you can jump onto the Western Bulldogs forum on Facebook as well that I run. There's 23,000 supporters on there. I give all the my match sim updates on there, even sort of training reviews. So if you want to sort of track how players are going, Western Bulldogs Forum online on Facebook, you can certainly extract from there as well. So, but thanks for having me, and go Doggies, and hopefully you get some insights today, people.
No, thanks, mate. Those details will be in the show notes as well as the potty. So check both of them out, guys. Appreciate you as always jumping on. Thanks, Matty. Thanks, community. And we'll talk soon. Bye.
Thanks, Wiz.